Hello and welcome to this video, which is intended to convince you that a student exchange would be just the right thing for your child. So I'm apparently a little bit too old to be a YouTuber, so why do I bring myself into the potentially embarrassing situation in front of this video camera? Well, the reason are my two kids. I'm the parent of two children that go to the local Alfred Ammann Gymnasium, which is the school here in the lovely town of Bönnigheim in the southwest of Germany. So, my children, they are in the age now where they should become a little bit more independent, and more importantly, they should learn foreign languages. So that brings me to the dilemma, which is the student exchange. The student exchange is great, but it will only happen if there are sufficient amounts of people on both sides of the exchange so that it actually happens. So that's why I'm here to do some advertisement. So, I talked to some kids who actually did a student exchange just recently, and I heard stories about parties, about ice cream parlors, about the local amusement park here, and which roller coaster ride was the most spectacular. Now then it dawned on me that one reason to do a student exchange is it's an awfully cheap vacation actually. So for £150 1 week to southern Germany, I think that's an incredibly good deal. So I wonder why I never get such good offers. Now, maybe I should be a little bit more what you might expect from a German businessman. I should bring more serious reasons and be a bit more businesslike. So let me try to do that. Second reason would be languages. Now I would like to illustrate that on the example of my personal history. So when I was younger, I did a master thesis, and I quickly found out that I would make a better thesis and progress faster with it if I can build upon the previous experience that other researchers have done before me. So with the help of my professor, we established contact to groups in France, US and Japan, who also worked on laser systems. That's when I found out that we all speak English, but we do not all speak English equally well. My ability to deliver a good thesis was actually dependent upon my ability to extract valuable information from these other people whose English was not so good. So, I think that is something your children can practice right away in a student exchange. They are welcome to come to Germany. They will certainly encounter people whose English is not so good, and they will find out their life is easier if they start to somehow cope with that. So, that brings me to reason number 3, which is intercultural skills. So later in my life I ended up in business, and I had managers that came from different countries. I remember a French lady, and there was a guy from Ireland and the Netherlands, and one from England actually, and from the United States. They all communicated differently to me than my German bosses would have earlier. And that was not a linguistic topic. It was more a question of style and pattern of communication. So what means of communication they would use, how often they would communicate, and how they would phrase certain things. So how would they express a sense of urgency, or how would they tell what they liked or not liked so much about it. My ability to advance in my career really depended on my ability to understand what these people just said. And it helped a lot to understand that within the cultural context of the person that actually said it. It turned out that Japanese always tend to communicate in a certain way, and that is different from how Americans would communicate, or Germans. So that was really important. Now later in my life it didn't get any better. Now I collaborate in teams with people from China or India or Luxembourg in my case. And my personal experience is, if you want to get something done by a man from India, you would better communicate that in a way which is compatible with the Indian culture. Otherwise you might wait a very long time. Now having said that, it's no surprise that our company had actually figured that out themselves, and they offer seminars on intercultural skills. And what I often hear is, oh gee, please leave me alone with all this Indian stuff, or I don't like to know all the peculiarities of the Chinese society, just leave me alone with that, I don't like these people anyway, or how those countries are run. Now, what our trainer would say, and what I would say, is that, well, that's fine. You can keep on not liking the Chinese or the German or whomever, that's fine. That's not the point. The point is that you understand that there are certain cultural differences, and what these specifically are, just that you are able to adapt to that on a more transactional and operational level, so that you can modify your behavior to get stuff done that you like. And you can still continue not liking those societies or those mentalities. So, now after all this, maybe we should stop talking about student exchanges, but instead go off, buy an airline ticket and send our kids to Shanghai right away for half a year. I'm kidding, of course. At least my kids, it would not be realistic nor advisable to send them off to a foreign country at the age of 14. That's not good. And they would hate you for even trying. No. There is a saying which is, you should learn to crawl before you learn to run. And I think that's a very good statement. And in this case it means that we shouldn't send them off to China just yet, but maybe do something a bit more simple. How about sending these children to a place where everyone speaks a little bit of English, where their classmates are around, and where they are accompanied by a teacher that they know? I think you understand that I'm talking about a student exchange to Germany, for example. Now that is far easier. And that brings me to the last and probably most important aspect, that is reason number 4, and that is independence and self-confidence. Now imagine that situation. So there is this baby of yours, which you have been looking after for many years. It depended on your supervision, help, guidance and all that. And now suddenly you send that child off to this foreign country across the water, where people eat funny stuff, they talk a weird language, and they drive on the wrong side of the road, which they would of course never admit. Now what will happen? Now extremely likely is that your kid will survive that 1 or 2 weeks. And then they will come home and they will say, actually that was doable. So all that talk about language and food and all that wasn't so complicated. And I got along without my parents decently well for a week. That's good. So your child has demonstrated to itself and to its environment that it can do stuff on its own nowadays, and that it is independent and can cope with unusual situations. Now that strengthens the child, and that's a building block upon which you can build the next experience, which could be a bit more challenging. And who knows, maybe after 5 years your child will ask you whether it can go to Shanghai for half a year of studies. So, and it will look much less complicated then. When I was preparing these arguments, I questioned myself, is it just my specific personal experience maybe that gives me a distorted view on this? Would I see this differently if things had if I had different experiences? And I think no. So imagine I had instead chosen to be a doctor. I think 1/4 of my patients would be born in a different country, and intercultural skills would be similar or valuable. I could have become somebody who works in tourism, then of course intercultural skills would be useful. I could have chosen to do arts or architecture, and maybe I work for the British Museum nowadays. Guess what? I would collaborate with other museums and maybe people from Germany or elsewhere in Europe. Then again, it would all be helpful. And I mentioned the sciences, of course, before. Well, sciences are international by nature, and you will very likely run into Germans whatever you try to do. And of course, even worse so is business or industry. It's really hard to do business or industry and not run into either a German customer or German supplier, or some form of interaction in general with foreigners. That is why I think there are so many things our children could do, but actually irrespective of what they do, there is such a big portion of those opportunities that require interaction with others that a student exchange would be a universally useful investment into the future of your child. So I would encourage you to do that. Now, I left the best thing for the end, and that is, if you listen carefully, you might have noticed that the things that I was describing, they would materialize irrespective of whether your child learns the language of the country it is visiting. I think all these things would happen anyway. That's why I hope you send your child on a student exchange, which will allow my children to come the other way. And I hope we'll run into each other in the context of a student exchange soon. Thank you very much.